Hi, I'm Arliss. They said my daughter was the dumb kid of the divorce. At the science fair, my sister's family laughed, right to her face. They never saw the nights she spent in our garage, turning scrap metal into solar rigs. Never guessed what that small card in her pocket meant. But one man did. He walked in, spoke her name, and their laughter died. Have you ever raised a child the world wrote off, only to watch her rewrite the rules? Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment. I read everyone. The gym at Mountain Ridge Middle smelled like floor wax and half-priced nachos. I tightened my grip on the cardboard trifold while Callie walked a half-step ahead of me, ponytail swinging like she owned the place. Around us, families unloaded glossy poster boards, battery packs, even ring lights clipped to tables. A dad in a blazer called out, "Team Neural Net, 10 minutes to showtime." His kids wore matching t-shirts. I glanced down at Callie's sweatshirt, one sleeve mended with yellow thread, and hoped the patch looked intentional. We found her assigned table, back row, right beside the girls' locker room door, and set the project down. Callie's experiment was simple: recycled soil sensors, a row of seedlings in repurposed yogurt cups, and data charts colored by hand. No LEDs, no rotating gears, just proof that neglected soil could breathe again if someone bothered to listen to it. Across the aisle, my sister Margot's daughter Harper flicked on a rainbow of lights around her display titled Neural Nets in Elementary Math. Harper's mom, my big sister in every sense, floated behind the booth, directing volunteers as if she ran the entire fair. When she spotted me, her lipstick curved, perfect and cold. She leaned toward her husband, Travis, and I heard him chuckle. "That's the dumb kid of the divorce, right?" Margot answered without a whisper. Bless her heart, she got her mom's brain. The words pricked like nettles. I felt 14 again, standing in our parents' kitchen with a B- report card, while Margot waved her straight A's. I should have said something clever, something sharp. Instead, muscles locked, and my tongue went dry. Callie kept adjusting the angle of her chart, pretending she hadn't heard. But her hand crept to the collar of her sweatshirt, fingers brushing the small wooden button I'd sewn on years ago, a star I'd whittled from a craft stick when she was 5. I'd told her, "You shine, no matter where they put you." She'd believed it then. I wasn't sure she believed it now. A panel of judges began their first lap. Clipboard guy paused at Harper's glowing kingdom, asked 3 questions, laughed in all the right places. When they reached Callie's booth, the woman in front skimmed our handwritten heading, listening to dirt, raised one brow, then kept moving. No questions, no notes, nothing. The last judge offered a tight smile, pity, not interest, before scribbling something I couldn't see. Callie's shoulders sagged, just a flicker, like a sapling bending under sudden wind. Then she stood taller, dug a fingertip into the soil cup, and reset the tiny sensor as if the world were still watching. I inhaled through my nose, counting 1, 2, 3, the way a therapist once coached me when the divorce papers arrived. Focus on the present, keep breathing. Yet every exhale tasted like regret. The night shifts that kept me from PTA meetings, the overdue bills crowding a kitchen drawer, the boxed mac and cheese dinner we'd eaten so I could buy copper wire for her prototype. Across the gym, my ex-husband's new wife snapped photos of Harper's neon paradise. She waved at me with cheerful cruelty. I nodded back, polite as a borrowed church hat, and turned away before my jaw cracked. Margot drifted closer, voice syrupy. "Arliss, I meant to text. You know, Callie could have joined Harper's group. Collaboration looks better on resumes." "Callie designed her own study," I said. "She doesn't need group credit." "Of course," Margot answered, eyes skating over the recycled yogurt cups like they were biohazards. "Individual effort builds character, if nothing else." She tapped Harper's table once, sending a ripple through the LED lights, then floated off to greet a reporter. Callie adjusted her glasses. "Mom, I'm fine," she whispered, though her throat worked hard around each word. "Really?" I swallowed the stone lodged behind my sternum. "I know. Let's finish strong." Minutes crawled. Kids cheered at a baking soda volcano. Parents clapped for a papier-mâché replica of the Mars rover. Our corner felt colder with every passing judge. Finally, a bell rang, signaling the end of evaluations. Judges handed score sheets to the coordinator, and chatter filled the gym like static. Somewhere near the snack table, Margot's crowd erupted in laughter, loud, relieved laughter that bounced off rafters and landed square on us. Callie's chin trembled. Just once. That was all it took. I moved to pack up, fingers stiff against the tape flaps of her trifold. My heartbeat drummed, half grief, half something fiercer. Protective love can taste a lot like rage. I wanted to drag her out, buy ice cream, promise none of this mattered, but promises felt thin in a room still humming with someone else's celebration. "Let's go," I whispered. Callie hesitated, eyes on the exit. Then a hush rippled through the crowd, subtle as a change in barometric pressure. The laughter stalled. I looked up. A tall man in a navy blazer had stepped inside, silver university pin catching the fluorescent light. His gaze swept the room once, then settled on Callie's booth, and didn't budge. The man in the navy jacket didn't bother with the main aisle. He strode between tables as if the scuffed floor were a private runway. His leather satchel brushed glitter volcanoes and cardboard planets, but he never lost focus. Callie felt him first. Her shoulders squared, chin lifting like a sunflower toward a sudden beam of light. The principal shuffled along behind, cheeks pink, tie crooked from the dash to catch up. "Professor Keating, right this way," he puffed, but the professor was already kneeling beside our modest setup, eyes level with Callie's seedling tray. "Calliope Vaughn." His voice carried the faintest Boston edge, crisp yet warm. Callie nodded. "You built all this yourself?" Another nod. "Walk me through it, please." She did, halting at first, then gathering momentum as he asked about moisture thresholds and conductivity curves. She showed him the handwritten graph where the cheap pencil kept smudging, and he smiled like smudges were badges of honor. Around us, chatter fell under an invisible dome. I could feel Margot's gaze drilling into my back. The laughter from her circle had thinned to wary silence. Elliot R. Keating. The name flashed through years of memory like a bookmark I'd forgotten. Skinny kid in a worn hoodie, devouring books at the community center where I volunteered. Back then, nobody expected him to finish high school, let alone anything more. I had stayed late 3 nights a week, helping him decode college essays, memorizing vocabulary taped to battered lockers. He'd left town with a scholarship and a promise to write. Now here he was, unmistakably grown, carrying the weight of his own achievements as lightly as that satchel. He studied Callie's final chart, tapped twice. "This is deceptively brilliant," he said, projecting just enough for nearby parents to hear. "Minimal resources, maximum signal. Do you know how rare that is?" Callie's freckles darkened as blood rushed to her cheeks. I just wanted the soil to speak. Behind us, Travis murmured, "Isn't that the MIT outreach guy?" His question ricocheted through the gym like a stray ping-pong ball, knocking the smug out of more than one face. Elliot reached into his bag, retrieved an ivory card, and set it on Callie's trifold. Gold lettering caught the fluorescent glare. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Visiting Youth Scholar Division. "We run a summer lab in Boston," he told her, "for students who build first and polish later. I'd like you there. Full sponsorship, if you're interested." Callie's fingers hovered over the card, hesitant to smudge something so pristine. Across the aisle, Harper's LED display flickered, a jealous tremor. Margot's mouth formed a polite circle, the kind she used when a caterer spilled sauce on her silk blouse, faux concern masking fury. I swallowed hard, memories of overnights grading Elliot's essays crashing into the present. Back then I'd almost quit. Budget cuts, endless double shifts, but he'd shown up every evening with dog-eared pages, hungry to learn. What if I'd walked away? The thought made my knees weaken. The principal cleared his throat, attempting to reclaim control. "Professor, we appreciate your time, but the awards—" "With respect, Principal," Elliot replied without turning. "Recognition can wait. Discovery can't." He extended his hand to Callie. "Deal?" She accepted. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes shone steadier than any LED. In that instant, the wooden star at her collar seemed to glow, though I knew it was just bad lighting and good timing. Whispers surged like storm water. One parent hissed, "They're handing scholarships to garage projects now?" Another answered, "Looks like purity of idea counts." I almost laughed at the irony. Purity, in a place that worshipped polished facades. Elliot finally rose, meeting my gaze. His grin widened. "Ms. Vaughn, didn't think I'd ever repay those late nights." "You just did," I managed, voice tight. He squeezed my arm, then moved on, leaving the card and a hush in his wake. Callie's hands wrapped around the small rectangle as if it were fragile glass. Across the room, Margot adjusted her blazer, composure cracking at the edges. I wanted to scoop Callie up, celebrate, maybe cry. But instincts yelled not yet. The same floor that had swallowed her earlier was still beneath our feet, and jealous eyes don't close easily. The MC tapped the mic, announcing results would be posted in 10 minutes. Noise restarted, but it sounded different, like a radio tuned to a kinder frequency. Callie exhaled. "Mom, did that actually happen?" "It happened." My voice wobbled, settling into steadiness. "And you earned every second." I tried to anchor the moment, but joy kept slipping under waves of disbelief. Then I saw Margot heading our way, steps measured, smile stretched too wide, like plastic warmed under a heat lamp. We'd barely gathered our breath when Margot materialized at my elbow, perfume first, smile second. She glided right up to Professor Keating, arms open as if cameras were rolling. "Elliot!" she trilled, pronouncing every vowel like it cost extra. "I had no idea you still did community outreach. How wonderful." She drew him into a brief hug, pressing the fabric of her blazer against his untouched one. He returned the embrace politely, though his brow creased as he released her. His eyes flicked to me in silent inquiry. I gave the smallest shake of my head. "Don't ask. Just note the performance." Margot pivoted to Callie, gaze sweeping over the soil cups and handwritten charts. "Sweetheart, this table looks cozy." She tapped one yogurt container with a manicured nail. "Rustic is trending, you know." Callie managed a stiff, "Thank you." Her fingers hid the MIT card behind her display, as if guarding a candle from wind. Margot's laugh rang out, bright on the surface, hollow beneath. "Callie's smart, sure, but kids of divorce work twice as hard to prove themselves." She said it loudly enough for the nearest parents to hear. Elliot's genial smile flattened. I felt my coat seem dig into my palm where I'd clenched it. Undeterred, my sister kept the show running. "We joked earlier," she announced to no one in particular, "that if Callie bombed today, we'd blame the divorce genes." She turned the joke into a stage wink. "Families tease, builds resilience." Callie's shoulders curved inward. The wooden star at her collar looked suddenly small. My jaw tightened until my molars protested. A few parents pretended to study their children's projects, ears angled toward the spectacle. Travis leaned against Harper's glowing booth, lips curled in laid-back amusement. His wink told the onlookers it was all in good fun, just harmless family banter. The air grew thin, the way it does before a thunderclap. I kept my voice level. "Callie's ideas stand on their own," I said. "She doesn't perform for applause." Margot blinked, one slow blink that always preceded a sharper blade. Before she could unsheath it, Elliot stepped forward. "Callie, our mobile lab is parked outside," he said, tone gentle but firm. "We've got new sensing prototypes. Would you like a quick tour?" Callie's eyes widened. She looked to me for permission. I rested a hand on her shoulder. "Go." She nodded. We started toward the side doors, but Margot called after us, bright as a bell. "Don't fill her head with too much, Elliot. Remember, she's not from your side of the family." I stopped, turned slowly. "Neither were you," I said, soft enough that only she could hear. Her painted smile wavered for half a heartbeat. Callie and Elliot continued ahead, chatting about capacitive sensors as though none of this mattered. Watching them, I felt a surge of gratitude and anger braided together. Gratitude for the rescue, anger that a rescue was needed at all. Behind me, chairs scraped. Parents resumed polite chatter, but their eyes kept sliding toward Margot, taking note. The picture she curated, poised matriarch, now had a crack down the middle. She recovered fast, spinning toward Travis. "They'll tire of this soon," she said, voice pitched low. "Boston Labs chew kids up. She'll be back here by fall, embarrassed." Travis shrugged, straightening his tie. Then he stepped close enough that I could smell his aftershave and hear the whisper meant only for me. "You can dress her up in MIT letters," he murmured. "But at the end of the day, Arliss, dirt sticks. And so does that last name you saddled her with." My stomach lurched as if the gym floor had tilted, seedlings and LED banners sliding toward some unseen edge. "Let's not pretend this place is for people like her," Travis muttered, voice low and smug near my ear. "MIT card or not, she'll always be from your side, the dropout divorcee branch." He didn't even look at me after, just turned, like what he'd said was as casual as commenting on the weather. I didn't move. For a breath or two, I couldn't, because that one sentence didn't just hit a nerve, it hit every unspoken wound stitched across my memory, that soft, smiling cruelty, the way they dressed up shame in silk and passed it around like fine wine. But I'd heard worse. I'd lived through worse. My hand stayed steady at my side. I turned to him, keeping my voice calm. "You'd be amazed," I said quietly, "how many revolutions started from the wrong side of the tracks." That made him pause, just for a second. His smirk twitched, then disappeared entirely. From behind us, I heard Callie's voice, light, bright. She was coming back, her cheeks flushed, eyes lit up like a lantern. Elliot walked beside her, holding a folded schematic in his hand. She clutched a brochure tight to her chest. "She asked really good questions," he said, almost surprised. "About circuit stabilization. I haven't seen a high schooler think that way in years." Callie looked at me, and her smile was real. No fear, no hesitation, just joy. That joy kids get when they finally feel seen. I nodded back at her, just a little. That was enough. Next to me, Margot's mouth curved into something that looked like a smile, but I knew it wasn't one. Her lips were too tight, her eyes were scanning Elliot, calculating. And Travis? He said nothing. But his jaw was tight, and his shoulders had stiffened like he'd swallowed something bitter. The moment stretched, but was interrupted by the soft click of heels on polished tile. "Excuse me," a woman said gently. She wore a brown press badge clipped to her collar and held a notepad in one hand. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Professional, but warm-eyed. "Hi there. I'm Della Foreman, small features reporter with the Oakbridge Weekly. I've been covering the fair today, and I couldn't help overhearing that your daughter's design made quite an impression. Would you two be open to a quick spotlight?" Before I could answer, Margot stepped in like a polished stage manager. "Actually," she said with a breezy laugh, "I'm her aunt, and the whole family is just thrilled about her little project. You know, she's always been bright." Callie blinked. I inhaled slowly. "Callie speaks for herself," I said, stepping slightly forward. "She can tell you about it if she wants to." The reporter looked at Callie, giving her space. I knelt just enough so Callie didn't feel so exposed. "You don't have to," I murmured to her. "But if you want to share, be yourself, just like when it was just us in the garage. That's enough." Callie hesitated, but then gave the smallest nod. She turned to the reporter, took one tiny breath, and said, I worked on it in our garage. It's not fancy or anything, but we tested everything, Mom and me, and she always says, function beats flash." The reporter's smile grew. "That's a great line," she said. "Mind if I quote that?" Callie shrugged, but she was grinning now. All around us, the noise of the fair seemed to hush for a moment. Even people just passing by paused. Some parents turned their heads. The camera guy tilted the lens down slightly, then nodded at Callie with a small thumbs up. Elliot crossed his arms, visibly impressed. "You've got an engineer's heart," he said. "And Margot?" That tight smile was gone. Her lips were parted slightly like she was still searching for a line, any line, to reclaim center stage. But there was none. For the first time, she wasn't the center of anything. The interview wrapped quickly. Della handed me a card, then patted Callie on the shoulder and moved on. Callie turned to me, eyes glowing. "Did I do okay?" "You did more than okay," I said, brushing a curl from her forehead. "You stood up." She beamed. And then, of course, it couldn't just end there. Travis brushed past me, slow and deliberate. No crowd now, no pretense of charm. He leaned in, voice cool and dry. "Just don't be surprised when she grows up and hates you for dragging her through your failures." That one landed. For a second, it felt like my lungs forgot how to work. He didn't stay to watch the impact, just kept walking. I stood there frozen. That old voice started creeping back, the one I used to hear late at night, when I doubted if I'd given Callie enough, done enough, been enough. But before I could react, someone else responded, and it wasn't who I expected. Travis's poison was still hanging in the air when a calm baritone cut through it, measured, almost surgical. "That's an interesting opinion," the voice said, "particularly from someone who hasn't filed a single line of research or raised this child." I pivoted. A man about my age stood a few steps away, trim beard, slate vest over a crisp shirt. A small metal pin, MIT's brass beaver, caught the hallway light. Elliot, 2 paces behind him, broke into a grin. "Dr. Hollenbeck," Elliot said, shaking the newcomer's hand. "Didn't expect to see you at a middle school fair." Hollenbeck kept his eyes on Travis. "Still speaking for children you didn't raise?" he asked, voice low enough for only our cluster to hear. The color drained from Travis's cheeks. "Family has standards," he muttered. "Funny thing about standards," Hollenbeck answered. "Ours revolve around merit, not bloodlines." He offered his hand to Callie. "I've been following your project since the first round of judging. Your moisture sensor array? Elegant, cheap parts, clean data." Callie's lips formed a cautious smile. "Thank you, sir." He pulled a business card from an inner pocket, matte gray with embossed letters. "Young Inventors Mentorship, Fall Cohort. We rarely invite middle schoolers, but brilliance ignores protocol. I'll sponsor your application." Callie held the card like a fragile bird. My heart thudded once, hard. Across the hallway, several parents fell quiet. One whispered, "Did he say sponsorship?" Margot cleared her throat, the practiced hostess returning. "Of course, we always knew Callie had potential. She spends summers with Harper, tinkering." "Actually," I interrupted, "she spends summers rebuilding discarded radios in our garage." I met Margot's eyes. Seems the dumb kid of the divorce did something right after all. Margot's lashes fluttered. Travis looked away, jaw grinding. A rumble of conversation rolled down the corridor, half curiosity, half discomfort. Della, the reporter from earlier, reappeared, camera now slung forward. "Dr. Hollenbeck, may I grab a quote?" she asked. "Community loves hero stories." He inclined his head. "Happy to, but Callie's the hero here." Flashbulb pop. A second parent snapped a phone picture. I heard the shudder and felt the tectonic plates under our family shift. Just a few inches, but permanently. A memory surged. Me, 26, baby on one hip, signed divorce decree on the other, college transcripts still in an envelope I never mailed. That afternoon, Margot had whispered to our mother, "If Arliss had half a brain, she'd marry well instead of trying to build things." I'd pretended not to hear, but some words tattoo themselves under the skin. Now, under fluorescent hallway lights, the tattoo began fading. Hollenbeck finished with the reporter, then faced Callie again. "Keep questioning everything," he told her. "That curiosity, that's the currency that matters." He nodded to me. "You gave her that." Callie slipped the mentorship card into her pocket, then surprised everyone by turning to Travis. No anger, no theatrics, just steady gaze. "You shouldn't talk about people like that," she said. "You don't even know me." Travis opened his mouth, but nothing emerged. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, shoulders rounded, confidence leaking away. Margot forced a brittle laugh. Kids and their big feelings, right? No one laughed with her. Silence spread, fragile but loud. Hollenbeck and Elliot moved on, the reporter following. Parents drifted, whispering. Callie slipped her hand into mine. For the first time all afternoon, I felt our footing solid beneath us. Travis stepped past, eyes averted, and tossed one last barb over his shoulder. Don't be shocked when she grows up and blames you for dragging her through your failures. I inhaled, ready to respond, but a different voice answered first, firm and unexpected. And then what? I turned, already expecting more backhanded praise or some sugar-coated spin. But Margot's voice came steady, cold. This changes nothing. She stood by the rear bumper of my car, arms folded, lips pressed so tight they were nearly colorless. The late afternoon sun hit her hair just enough to make her look like she belonged on a magazine cover again. Always polished, always composed, and always cruel in the most civilized way. I leaned my back against the passenger door and folded my arms too. You sure about that? Margot gave a clipped laugh. You really think a card from some guy in a vest is going to undo 30 years of choices? She shifted her weight. Just because one man handed your kid a card doesn't erase history. I didn't answer right away. Behind me, through the cracked window, I could hear Callie humming softly as she traced the outline of the MIT logo on the card with her finger. Margot stepped closer. Her heels clicked softly on the pavement. I was the one who told Mom to invite you after the divorce. I always said Travis was too hard on you. I tried to keep things balanced. It was so smoothly delivered, so perfectly timed, I almost wanted to believe her. Almost. But memories rose like smoke in my chest. I remembered birthdays I wasn't invited to, Christmases where my name wasn't even on the gift list. Margot always had a reason. It must have gotten lost in the mail, or I thought you were spending it with your dad. There was always an excuse. Always a smile. I didn't move. You were cruel, I said quietly. You knew how they treated me. You helped them do it. Margot blinked. That's not fair. No, I said. It's accurate. She rolled her eyes, the corners of her mouth tightening again. Look, don't let this get to your head. You think one moment like this makes you better than the rest of us? She motioned toward the building behind us. You're still divorced, still scraping by, still living on your little paycheck and your self-righteous pride. That last part hit different than she expected, because it wasn't anger that stirred in me. It was clarity. I stepped toward her, closing the space between us, but my voice stayed level. And you're still terrified of being exposed, still clinging to the idea that if you control the narrative, no one will see the truth. She flinched, just slightly. I went on, calm and measured. We're not the same, Margot. I never had to step on someone else to feel taller. I never needed to erase people from my life just to feel like I mattered more. A soft knock on the window made me turn. Callie leaned forward in her seat, her face half-shadowed in the fading light. Mom, she called through the glass. Are we still going to Grandma's this weekend? My chest tightened. For a moment I hesitated. Old habits die hard. But I reached for the door handle, opened it, and crouched beside her. No, honey, I said gently, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. Not anymore. Callie didn't ask why. She just nodded once and looked back down at the card in her hand. As I stood again, I felt Margot watching us, her mouth slightly open like she might still try to explain herself. She didn't. She just turned away and started walking toward her car. But as I watched her leave, something shifted inside me. It wasn't triumph. Not exactly. And it wasn't anger either. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want her to hurt the way she had hurt me. What I felt was release. Like a tight, invisible rope I hadn't even realized was wrapped around my chest had just gone slack. I exhaled for the first time in years. I leaned against the car and let the quiet settle over me. The wind carried a few high-pitched giggles from the other side of the building. Probably kids still lingering from the science fair, the kind Callie might actually get to mentor one day. My mind drifted, uninvited, to a moment I'd buried deep. I was 16. Margot had just gotten her acceptance letter to Brown. My mom had printed a photo of her holding the envelope, framed it. I asked if I could get a copy of the family vacation album that summer. When I finally saw it weeks later, every photo I was in had been cropped. There was one, just one, where my elbow was still visible in the corner. And no, my name wasn't tagged. I wasn't even listed. That's when I learned how to disappear politely and how to survive quietly. Now, watching Margot get into her Lexus and drive away without so much as a glance back, I realized something else. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her recognition. What Callie got today wasn't just an invitation, it was proof that everything I fought to preserve in silence had actually meant something. My phone buzzed in my purse, a message from my landlord reminding me about the lease renewal. I'd get to it, but not now. I didn't start the car right away. Instead, I turned the engine off, sat there for a long moment, and let the sun dip just a little lower behind the treetops. Then, with a sudden decision, I buckled Callie in properly, locked the doors, and eased us out of the parking lot. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I parked in front of a building I hadn't visited in years. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I parked in front of a building I hadn't stepped into since the year Callie was born. It looked smaller than I remembered, like time had pressed it down, not in decay, but in quiet dignity. The county courthouse. The bricks still the same soft gray, the entrance flanked by those two stubborn oak trees that somehow survived every storm. I sat in the car for a moment, listening to the tick of the engine cooling, my eyes landing on the envelope resting in the passenger seat. Inside was everything. Not revenge, not bitterness, just evidence, truth, and a decision I had put off for too long. The morning air nipped at my face as I stepped out. I zipped my jacket all the way up, pressing my fingers into the pockets where Callie's MIT card still sat, like a little lighthouse I carried with me. I adjusted the strap of my purse, the sealed envelope tucked safely inside, and walked toward the glass doors. Security was quiet. A kind-faced officer waved me through after a routine check. No drama, no delay, just a nod. I signed in at the reception desk, giving my name clearly, watching the clerk scan a list and gesture politely. The building hummed with the low murmur of legal wheels turning. Nothing flashy, nothing urgent, just a place where things were recorded, processed, sealed into permanence. I hadn't felt this grounded in a long time. I took a seat in the waiting area, back straight, legs crossed, hands folded in my lap. There was no need to fidget, no urge to run. I wasn't here to make a scene or demand anything. I was here for peace, to protect that little lighthouse in my pocket, and myself, from further weathering. A woman from the legal aid office approached. Mid-40s, modest suit, gentle smile. Her name tag read, Erica. She sat beside me with a soft sigh, the kind people make when they're used to carrying others' burdens. "You're Ms. Monroe?" she asked. "Yes," I nodded. "Arliss." We moved to a small consultation room. I handed her the envelope, heart thudding a little faster as she pulled out each item with gloved precision. Printed emails, dated voicemails, a few screenshots of old texts. Most came from Margot and Travis. A decade of little jabs, digs, the kind that were just subtle enough to be dismissed, just sharp enough to leave a mark. She scanned through quickly, eyes narrowing just slightly at one particular sheet. Then she slid her finger down a transcript. "This voicemail here. Do you mind if I play it?" I gave a nod. She hit play. A woman's voice came through, flat but unmistakably familiar. "Don't expect a call from Grandma. This family celebrates winners, not strays." It had come on Callie's 10th birthday. I remembered her holding the phone, confused, asking, "Did I do something wrong?" And me, lying through my teeth, telling her, "Of course not, baby. They just forgot." Erica didn't pause the tape. She let it finish in full silence. Then she looked up and said something I hadn't heard from anyone official in over 15 years. "You have more than enough." That was it. No questions, no disbelief, no need for dramatic storytelling. Just quiet affirmation, like the sound of a door locking from the inside. For safety. For good. She helped me fill out the necessary forms. I signed each page with a steady hand. I watched as the clerk stamped the top right corner. The sound was small, but it echoed. Done. The restraining order wasn't about fear. I wasn't afraid of Margot or Travis. I was done explaining myself to people who refused to listen. I wasn't asking them to change anymore. I was removing their access. They wouldn't expect it. Not from me. I was the quiet one. The girl who married too young, divorced too soon. The woman raising a daughter they claimed would never make it. Filing a legal boundary wasn't something they could brush off like an awkward family dinner. It would come in the mail. Certified. Undeniable. As I walked back out into the parking lot, the cold had sharpened, the kind of chill that cleared your head instead of clouding it. I pulled my phone from my coat and dialed a familiar number. "Russell," I said when he picked up. "Hi, it's Arliss. I was wondering if I could swing by later this week. I've got something I think you might want to see. A proposal." Russell had been my landlord for the last 6 years, but before that he ran a fabrication company. I'd done side work for him a long time ago, CAD designs, layout mock-ups, nothing big, just enough to keep my skills from rusting. Lately, though, I'd been sketching more, thinking bigger. He paused. "Proposal, huh?" "You'll see," I said with a small smile. "I think it could help both of us." That night, as Callie and I settled in for dinner, she pulled out a worn spiral notebook. "Can I show you something?" I nodded. She opened it near the back, where the pages had curled slightly. It was a rough drawing, but detailed, lines measured, angles precise. It showed a series of recycled shipping containers arranged into a compact solar-powered lab. "For schools," she explained softly, "out in places like where Aunt Liv teaches, where they don't have real labs. I want to build something real, not just for college, for now." I touched the edge of the page, stunned not by the design, but by how deeply she was already thinking ahead. Quietly, determinedly. I exhaled. Something had shifted, not in them, in me. For years I tried to earn a seat at their table, tried to be palatable, agreeable. I twisted myself into their narrative just to be tolerated. But this wasn't about tolerance. This was about legacy. The one Callie and I were writing on our own paper. No drama, no applause. Just truth, filed and signed. As I tucked her notebook away for the night, I felt something ease inside me. A rope snapped loose, one I hadn't realized was still tied to their version of me, the version that begged, proved, apologized. I didn't owe them anything anymore. The documents had been filed, but I still had one stop left before the news reached them. The next morning, sunlight climbed the Blue Ridge ridges and slid across downtown Asheville. I parked in front of Nouvelle Nest, the design boutique where, 5 years ago, Margot had leafed through my portfolio like it was a thrift store flyer. Back then, the manager, Grant, had laughed along, polite yet dismissive. Today I walked in carrying a slim black binder and the quiet confidence of stamped court papers. Hardwood floors creaked under my boots. Chalkboard quotes, "Live simply, design boldly," still decorated the brick walls. Jazz murmured from hidden speakers. Grant looked up from the counter, eyebrows lifting in recognition. "Arliss Monroe," he said, smoothing his vest. "Been a while." "It has." I offered a handshake. "You mentioned last year you wanted eco-conscious builds. I think I have something worth your time." Curiosity overrode his skepticism. "Let's see it." I opened the binder on a marble display table. Callie's hand-drawn blueprint lay on top, 6 recycled shipping containers arranged in a honeycomb, rooftop solar panels tilted to optimum angle, rain catch barrels feeding a hydroponic strip along the south wall. "We call it the Brightbox Lab," I said, "modular science classrooms that can roll into rural districts for a fraction of brick-and-mortar cost." My daughter sketched the core. I refined the structural load and power grid. Grant traced a finger along the penciled gutters. And construction? I've priced local fabricators. Container shells run $3,000 each, retrofits another $7. Sponsorship plaques on the panels cover half. District grants cover the rest. He whistled under his breath. Marketable. And needed. He looked up. Who drafted the original frame? A girl they called dumb at a science fair, I answered, smiling without bitterness. Grant's posture changed, the subtle shift people make when they realize they've underestimated the room. He opened a calendar app. Can you pitch this Friday to our investor circle? Before I could respond, his phone rang. Excusing himself, he stepped into the office. My own cell buzzed. A text from Erica, my legal aid contact. Notice served. Restraining order active as of 8:14 a.m. You're protected. I exhaled. Somewhere across town, Margot was opening an envelope she never saw coming. I pictured her at the breakfast bar, Mug paused midway, Travis blurting a curse that cracked the calm. Yet in my imagined scene, she didn't shout. She simply stared, understanding that the story had been edited without her permission. The phone rang again, this time Callie, calling from school lunch. Mom, someone from MIT emailed. They want me to share the sensor project at their fall tech fair in Boston. They said Dr. Hollenbeck recommended me. My knees softened. I steadied myself against a display shelf. We'll pack a coat, I managed, voice steady. A laugh bubbled through the receiver, pure, bright. Love you, Mom. Click. Grant returned, excitement replacing his earlier reserve. Friday at 10, he said, tapping the calendar. Bring cost breakdowns and a brief slide deck. Investors will eat this up. I agreed, collected the binder, and thanked him. As I reached the door, a theft alarm somewhere 2 blocks away wailed, then fell silent, like a metaphor punctuating the morning. I paused on the sidewalk, binder tucked under my arm, cold mountain air brushing my cheeks. A delivery driver hustled past, mumbling about parking tickets. A busker tuned a banjo near the corner cafe. Ordinary life, yet everything felt newly possible. Years ago, I'd stood inside these same glass panes clutching sketches, stomach tight with shame as Margot's words echoed, "Stick to story time, Arliss. Design is for people who finish things." Today, I carried proof that soft-spoken persistence can build legacies loud enough to echo without shouting. I closed the boutique door behind me. The bell chimed once, clear and bright. Turning toward the street, I nearly collided with a tall figure in a worn leather jacket. Gray threaded his beard now, but his eyes were exactly as I remembered. Steady, kind. He blinked in surprise. Arliss, been a long time. I swallowed, heart skittering. Mr. Heath, I whispered. My high school science teacher, the first person who told me my own ideas had weight. I didn't move at first. The bell above the boutique door had just finished its soft chime when I looked up and saw him, leaning slightly on a cane, wearing that same navy windbreaker from years ago. His hair had silvered, but the way he tilted his head when he saw me, that was still the same. Mr. Heath. He gave a small nod, like he'd been waiting to be seen. By the time we reached the cafe patio down the street, his suggestion, not mine, the air had cooled, and the late afternoon sun angled low through branches shedding golden leaves. The brick beneath our feet was damp from an earlier rain, but the metal chairs were dry and warm in the sunlight. He pulled his seat slowly, with care, and when I set my bag down, he simply said, "You've grown into your face." I laughed, more startled than amused. What does that mean? It means, he smiled gently, you used to carry your worth like a secret. Now it's right there, in your posture, your voice. We ordered coffee, black for him, latte for me, and sat watching kids from the nearby school racing toward the parking lot, slapping high fives and calling to parents from the curb. A memory flickered in me. How many times I'd stood alone after class, arms full of notebooks, watching everyone else ride off like they belonged. I saw Callie's name, he said suddenly, in the district's alumni bulletin, MIT? I nodded, my hands wrapped around the warm ceramic cup. Early admission, fall tech fair presentation. She's been designing things since she could hold a pencil. He leaned forward. They used to mock her. Same way they mocked you. Said she was just a kid with big eyes and no grit. She's got more grit than I ever had, I murmured. But you knew, didn't you? Mr. Heath blinked at me, and in that blink was 20 years of quiet witnessing. That day, senior year, I continued, when my parents told you I wasn't going to apply for college, said I wasn't cut out for it, you slipped me that scholarship form anyway, slid it under my notebook like it was nothing. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted the cup to his lips. I remember. You didn't say anything. No? But I filled it out. He looked at me with eyes that had probably watched hundreds of students come and go, but at that moment, I felt like I was the only one who ever stayed. And now, he said softly, you're the one seeing. You made space for her, when no one made space for you. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. Scrolling past messages, past photos of construction sites and fabric samples, I stopped on one picture and turned the screen toward him. That's her, I said, at the community lab, the one we built from scratch, out of shipping containers. She's explaining the solar rig to a group of kids. See the name on her coat? He leaned in and smiled. Callie DeWitt, looks good in a bold font. Yeah, I said, my voice catching. It does. He chuckled, then tilted his chin. You ever hear from your family? I hesitated, then reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, tight, neat, controlled. I'd found it in the mailbox the morning before. I unfolded the note and read it aloud. I was wrong. About you. About her. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope she changes the world. Mom. I set the paper on the table between us. Neither of us reached for it. I'm not replying, I said. You don't have to, he replied. Not everything needs to be reopened. We sat a while longer, the sound of jazz drifting from the cafe speakers behind us. As the sun dipped lower, I stood. She's almost done packing. Train leaves tomorrow. She's ready. I smiled. So am I. Later that evening, I walked back through our front door to find her crouched by her suitcase, folding her favorite hoodie on top. Her room smelled like vanilla lotion and highlighter ink. She glanced up and held something out. It was the old MIT card, the one from that fair where she'd been dismissed, laughed at, dismissed again. She held it delicately between two fingers, like it was glass. I'm not taking it because I need it, she said. I'm taking it because it reminds me who I am. The next morning, I stood with her on the platform. The train screeched in, loud and metallic. She hugged me hard, longer than usual. As the doors closed behind her, I whispered, just loud enough that I hoped she'd hear me through the glass. They called you the dumb kid of the divorce, but they were wrong. You're the blueprint. When I got back home, I took my sketchbook from the shelf above the old workbench. Flipping through pages of worn pencil lines, I paused on the original drawing, the very first idea I'd had for the mobile lab, and right there, taped beside it, was her card. Not tucked, not hidden, taped, flat and clear, not for proof, but as a compass, a reminder of how far we've come, together. Have you ever been the one they forgot? Only to raise someone unforgettable? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.